Hello, everyone. This is your host, Debra Poneman, and I'd like to welcome you to our call with today's guest, Sharon Lynn Wyeth. Sharon is an author, speaker, and the creator of Neimology Science, the study of the placement of the letters in a name to determine a person's personality predispositions and secrets about their character. Sharon's work has been recognized internationally. She's been invited to speak on Nameology in 49 states and to share how she's linked the patterns and names to a person's mindset and personality. In fact, Sharon worked on figuring out the patterns of the different letters for 15 years before she fully comprehended all of the nuances and then tested her theories for 3 more. And now Sharon is sought after by corporations when hiring, by families when there's discord, by people who are interested in creating a new name for their business or product, and by others who simply want to improve their lives and their relationships. She's a frequent guest on radio and speaks worldwide as she constantly amazes people with her accuracy. And today you'll discover a whole new way to look at names, as well as how names are constructed to tell us about our gifts and challenges, how your name represents who you are, how to start a conversation with anyone using their name, and finally, the keys to the 6 communication styles. Well, I am so excited about this interview. Sharon, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Debra, it's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Well, this sounds so unique and so fascinating, and I would love it if you could take a few minutes and share with us how you developed this. What were the major turning points in your life that allowed you to manifest this amazing body of knowledge?
Well, I'm a school teacher. And as everyone knows, at the beginning of the year, you get a list of the 150 students that you're going to get for the year over your 5 classes. And so you make a seating chart so that everybody will have a place to sit, and you let the students know right away that the teacher's in charge in this room. So you randomly just put students anywhere. Now, once you get to know the students, you take a lot of time and who sits where and next to whom, because you want to create a very safe learning environment for everyone. So it was at the beginning of my 7th year of teaching, and I was beginning to randomly put the names down when my brain started saying things like, oh, don't put Joshua next to Julie because you know they're going to be laughing in clowns together, but separated they're going to be okay. And Derek's going to need extra help, so put him toward the front. And Stephanie's never going to want to move her seat because she's very stubborn. So put her over here on the side so you can always move people around her. And I was doing that, and because it's so natural during the year, it took me a few classes to realize, oh my gosh, I'm doing what I normally do once I know the kids, but I don't know any of them. I just have names here. So after getting over feeling guilty because I already had impressions of kids only based on their names, I thought, I wonder if my brain has picked up some kind of a pattern in the names subconsciously. And my brain is very well trained in patterns because I'm a math major in college, and I also have my master's degree. And so people that are good at math are really good at patterns. So I decided to write down everything that my brain was telling me about every person. And I decided to put that away until winter break and then to look at it and see if there was anything to it. So I did that. And at winter break, when I read what I had written, I thought, OMG, look at this. This is a shortcut to getting to know anybody. And I thought in our instant society where we want everything yesterday, the minute we figured it out, that I thought, all right, we can get to know people faster. And so I started saying, how do I make what is unconscious conscious? So I started with a list. There were a plethora of Davids in my life. So I made a list for every single David, all the adverbs and adjectives that I could think of that would describe each one of the Davids I knew. And then I said, what do they have in common? That's got to sit in the first name. And what do they not have in common? Well, it's got to come from somewhere. So it's either got to be the middle or the last. And that's how I started. I just made list after list after list. And over time, I could tear it down not only by names, whole names, but but the letters within the name, and then as the letters move through the name. For an example, if an A is the first vowel of the first name, so it could be like in an Alicia or in a Sharon, that it's the first vowel. It doesn't matter where the placement is, but it's the first vowel. That person has a tendency to be a workaholic. But if the A shows up in the middle of the name, it means that person knows how to work, but they don't want to do any more work than they have to. And if the A shows up at the last letter of the name, it says they realize it's very important to be likable, so they've made themselves as likable as they possibly can, but they're not going to change who they are and able to get liked. And the other thing I found that was just fascinating to me was that the first name represents the essence of who we are. The middle name represents who we become under stress or how we act when we're stressed. And if we don't have a middle name, it's still the first name qualities. And the last name represents our environment or how outside influences push against our innateness and how we mold or bend because of that outside influence.
Whoa. You had me with the last vowel being that you do everything you do to be likable, because my name is Debra and A is the last. And even though I love to work, it's like my big thing is I got to be liked. I got to be likable. That is fascinating. Okay, so we want, of course, everybody listening wants to know more and more about themselves. So can you explain more about how our name says something about us? You already gave us the A, and I'm wondering how people who have their first two letters of their names are like Aaron, A-A-R-O-N. Wow, they must really be a workaholic. So why would our parents give us a name, or do we grow into our name, or do our parents have this good intuition on what to call us? How does that work?
Well, it depends on whether you want to look at it by a scientific means or you want to look at it through a religious means. If we're looking at it through a religious means, when there was still only 7 religions on the planet before they multiplied, divided, and everybody made up their own, what those 7 all agreed on, they agreed on 10 major things. One of them was that the incoming soul impresses upon the person naming them what they want to be called. So in essence, we name ourselves. So that would explain why we are our names. On the other side, on the scientific side, there is different scientific studies that give the influence of sound on our actual DNA structure and how sound can change. Now, a lot of people have heard about the programs that certain sounds help the brain learn, and the Beethoven and the Mozart and all of that. Well, different sounds literally can form or change or mold or influence who we are. And what sound do we hear more than any other sound? The sound of our name. So we literally adapt over time to that vibration that is made by our name. So it doesn't matter whether you look at it scientifically or religiously, we are our names.
Well, then do you have advice for parents when naming their children?
Somehow at some time, something's going to resonate with them on how to name their child. There's a fabulous story when the mother and the father were sleeping, and when they woke up in the morning, the father turned to his wife and said, "Our son came to me in the dream last night, and he gave me his name." And the wife said, "Well, our son came to me too. So go in the other room and write down what you heard, and I'll stay here and write down what I heard, and then let's compare." And one wrote down Joshua Jedediah, and the husband wrote down Joshua Jeremiah. And so the husband said, "Well, you normally get this better than I do, so let's call him Joshua Jedediah." Now, the thing about this was they didn't even know she was pregnant yet. And that's how they both realized she's pregnant. So time goes on, and 2 weeks before the baby's born, the father has another dream. In the meantime, they've constantly called this baby Joshua Jedediah, never had a test whether it was a boy or girl. They just knew. And so 2 weeks before the baby's born, the father has another dream. And in the dream, the son is saying, "Why did you listen to her? She got it wrong. That's why I had to come to you. I don't want to be a Jedediah. I want to be a Jeremiah." So the couple named the boy Joshua Jeremiah. But the most amazing part was when the child was less than 3 years old. The mother was sitting and doing an art project at night, and the father wasn't home. And the child got out of bed, Joshua did, and he came up to his mother and he said, "You almost got my name wrong." And of course, the mother was, wait, what are we talking about? Because almost 3 years had passed. So what are we talking about? And the child says, "I came to you and gave you my name, and you almost got it wrong, and I had to go to Dad." I have heard so many stories like that all around the world when I've traveled, that I think there's something within us that just knows this is the name. Now, when you know what your child's name is, then I say, call me and let me help you with the spelling. Because there's certain combinations together that'll give that child a challenge. And you want the soul to learn what it came to learn, and at the same time, you want to make it easier on them. So we can adjust that with how we spell that name.
And that I assume that's part of the science of Nameology, which you are obviously the expert in the world. And I just want to tell you that when our children were born, we didn't name them before they were born. We actually almost got in a fight with the hospitals because we didn't name our children till 3 or 4 days after they were born, because we wanted to get the feeling of what they wanted to be named. And our daughter, we were going to name her Deanna, but we knew it wasn't right. And on the 4th day, it came to us that it was not Deanna, it was Deanna. And even though that's a more unusual name, that was what she told us, that it wasn't Deanna, it was Deanna. So I am with you on this. And however, a lot of people like Deanna, now she's 25, and many people call her Deanna, but a lot of people call her Dee Dee. So what happens when somebody is given a name that came to the parents, and then they are called by a nickname? Why would that be?
Well, a lot of people will use a nickname, and sometimes they go by many different nicknames, depends on who they're talking with. And what that means is we are our birth name. And inside all of us, that's what we came to learn. That's who we came to be. Our contract with God is in that name. If you know how to read it, our personality is in that name. However, there's different times when you want to focus on a certain part of your personality, or you're working on certain lessons and you don't want to deal with all of them. It's kind of like saying when you're in college, I only want to take 3 subjects this semester, even though in high school I always took 6. I want to focus on 3. So when you're wanting to focus only on a smaller amount of that which you came to do, you go by a nickname or a shortened name. And so you're saying, I am who I am inside, but I'm only going to present at this time that which is represented by my nickname. So I'm only working on those things at this particular time. The other way we do nicknames is when nicknames are given to us by somebody else, and what they're really saying is, I only want to see this part of who you are. Please only show me these qualities and characteristics when I'm with you, and not the rest of the package. Now, the most interesting thing about that is how many parents change their children's name to have a Y at the end. So instead of Candace, it's Candy, or instead of Robert, it's Bobby. And there's so many that all of a sudden we put a Y at the end. And a Y at the end means that we need to be the chameleon, and we need to please the people around us and get along with everybody. And we need to change who we are and able to mold into the group or to please the people around us. And therefore, when the parents are renaming their child with a Y at the end, they're saying, adapt to me and learn how to please me.
Fascinating. It's interesting because my name was Debbie. And when I was about 28 or 29, I thought, no more Debbie, it's Debra. And I changed my name to Debra.
Right, but it's claiming and saying, I'm not here to please everybody else. I'm here to learn what I need to and to please me.
How fascinating. So could you tell us a little bit more about various sounds and various things? I love this with the Y at the end and the A at the beginning, middle, or end. Can you tell us a little bit more about what different sounds and different names, how they represent who we are?
Sure. Sometimes combinations of letters will make a difference. For an example, if you're sitting next to somebody you really, really like at a conference, then you might be a lot more talkative than if you're sitting next to somebody you don't know or somebody that you don't like. So when two letters go together, they make a whole new quality and characteristic depending on whether those letters like each other or not. So an example of this is the S and the T. So the S, now I want you to know that every letter stands for like 10 to 20 qualities and characteristics. So I'm just giving you a very brief example of each letter. But one of the things that the S stands for is school smart. People with an S can learn anything, and they're constant learners. They enjoy learning. And so the T next to it, the T, these people like to be on top. They're very competitive. And yet at the same time, if they don't think they can be the top one in something, they won't try at all. Because if I can't be the best, then why bother? And they're also very athletic with that T. But when you put the S next to the T, it causes stubbornness. But graciously, every sound or every letter has both a positive attribute with it that is balanced by a challenging attribute. And they're very well balanced. So the ST is stubbornness, where you can get in your own way. But the positive or the gift that comes with it is persistence. These are people that don't give up. If they have to go through 8 years of medical school or they have to stay at something that's really difficult, they're not ones to give up. And they usually don't give up on relationships unless something really drastic has happened. And so the ST, I always think is stubborn for ST, or it's the persistence. Another one that's interesting is how different letters can represent different angles or directions of the same thing. For an example, I always say that my S and my W and my J are all letters that represent intelligence, but different kinds of intelligence. So the J, these are the jokers. They have a wise wit about them, and they have this sense of humor, but they have a thinking type of wit. And they are truly like the jokers in the old court of the king and the queen and the jokers. But these people are brilliant. They think outside the box. And when people come up and ask them a question, they give the answer. And when the people are thinking, wow, how did you know that? The J is thinking, hello, how did you not know that? Because they're highly intuitive and they just have a grasp. It's what I call street smart. And they just have this wide range of knowledge. That's the J for their type of knowledge. Now, S also represents intelligence, but that's book learning. That's learning from others. And the S says, let me learn it and show me the basics. But once I've got the basics, go away and leave me alone and don't micromanage me. So it's really tricky when you're teaching somebody with an S in their name, because yes, they want your help, and yes, they want to learn the basics from you. But the minute they catch on, it's like, get lost. They don't need you anymore. All right? So I call that school smart. But the W learns through experience. They hate making the same mistake twice. It really bugs them. So what they do is they have an experience, and then they learn from that experience. And then they have another experience, and then they learn from that experience. So the W is able to take experiences and learning or knowledge and literally turn it into wisdom. And not everybody that has a lot of knowledge knows how to use it wisely, but the W's will. And so every group of letters or every quality that we're looking for in somebody, it'll be represented in 2 or 3 different letters, and the way it's represented shows how that will show up for that particular person.
Wow. This is blowing my mind, because every example that you've used, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so accurate. The ST being stubbornness and persistence. I have a cousin, brilliant, stubborn as can be, but brilliant and persistent. And everything you've said, I'm thinking it's mind-boggling. And another thing that you said that you were going to share with us is how we can actually interact with people, like start a conversation with someone that we've just met. I guess we'd have the upper hand if we know what their name is and use our knowledge of Nameology. Can you explain how we could start a conversation with anyone using their name?
Well, our communication style lies in the first vowel of the first name. So it's either an A, E, I, O, or a Y or a U. So when I'm looking at somebody or they're meeting somebody for the first time, sometimes the name will go by me so fast, or that it's one that can be spelt many different ways. So I'll ask, how do you spell your name? You know that in all these years, I've never had somebody not willing to spell their name for me. And once they've given me that first vowel in their name, I'm off and running. If that first vowel, it doesn't matter if it's the first letter, the second letter, the third letter, I'm looking for the first vowel in the first name. And if it is an A, this is a mental person. It's somebody who loves books, who keeps the bookstores in order. So if you want to talk to somebody with an A, right away you just say, hey, have you read any good books lately? That person will say, oh, have you read this one? Have you read this one? And all you have to do is say, well, what did you like about that one? Or which one's better? Which one would I read first? And they'll talk forever about their books that they've read because they like to engage the mental mind because that's who they are. Exactly opposite of that is people with the first vowel of an E. These people are emotional. They come from the heart instead of the head. And so they're very good listeners. They're very empathetic, and they love, and they have these warm, open hearts. So when you meet one of them, they also like the feel of things and the touch of things, and they're here to make the world a more beautiful place. So you can always ask for advice for them. And you can say, you know, I've decorated this, or I'm having problems. I understand you have a good eye, and I'm decorating this, and I'm having problems with this. Or I'm having a hard time deciding what to wear to this function, and what would you suggest? And these guys have a great eye and usually give very good advice. Plus, they're very good listeners. And so if you have a problem and you'd like some other input on it, your first vowel of an E is the person to talk with and say, listen, I would love to have your take on this, what's happened to me. And they will listen, and then they will give you good advice. They also have a great sense of humor, so they'll usually plug in some humor somewhere. For the first vowel of an I, these people are family-oriented, and people are very important to them, especially their family members. You know that all the lessons we get in life come in one of three packages. They're either concerning our health, they're concerning our finances, or they're concerning our relationships. Every problem that we have comes in one of those three ways. And so the I person says that I'm going to major in relationships, and I'm going to excel in family relationships. So my family relationships will be the good, bad, and the ugly, but that's where I'm going to do my most growth. So it's very easy to start a conversation with someone who has the first vowel of an I, because you simply say, hey, how's your family? Or tell me about your family. Or do you have brothers and sisters? Do you have children? Off and running they go, because their lives are all surrounding and all about family. When you get to the O, these are the CEOs of the company. They like autonomy. They like to be the boss. They like to nurture others, but they also like to tell other people, what to do. And so they're full of knowledge, and they want to take care of people. They like to feel useful. So if you're talking to them and you say, I have this project going on, can you make any suggestions about it? They would love to tell you. The other thing is the O's generally have so much extra love to share that they usually have pets. So you can always ask, do you have any pets? And they'll be off and running, telling you about their cat, their dog, their fish, their hamsters, their guinea pigs, whatever it is that they have, because they have such big, warm, open hearts, and they love to nurture, that often that will spill out, and they will have plenty of pets. They're also usually in charge of something. So you can also say, I'm thinking about a new job, and I'm thinking about changing something at work. What would you suggest I do? Or do you have any advice for me? Because they love being the boss, and often they've gotten there through a lot of hard work. So they have great ideas for anybody else who's struggling to get ahead. The person with the first vowel of a U is our entertainers. If you look at how many actors and actresses have the first vowel of a U, it's just astonishing, because those actors and actresses are usually the creme de la creme, or the ones that the rest of the industry look at for more entertainment. And it's not that they're all necessarily funny, even though they have a good sense of humor. it's interesting how they tell their stories or how they put their sentences together. They're just interesting to look to. They like to have experiences. So you can always say for somebody who has a first vowel of a U, where's your favorite restaurant? Or where have you traveled that you would love to go back to? In other words, where was your last adventure and tell me about it? And they can start talking, and all you have to do is listen, and they're going to think you're a great conversationalist. Then with the Y is the most mysterious of all of the vowels. These are people that are gracious hosts. They're always looking out for everybody else. But they're also looking to see, when I get to be in charge, what is it I'm going to do? So they're always learning from everybody else. They're also the ones that are the seekers. They want to know about spirituality. They want to know about how the world works and why are we here. So it's very easy to get them started talking on anything that has to do with spirituality, anything that has to do with learning, anything that has to do with giving a good party. They're the most gracious hosts out there. So if you're thinking about doing something or having an event, you definitely want to get involved your people that have that first vowel of a Y. So those are some of the ways that you can start a conversation with anybody.
I'm definitely going to try this out. It's going to be a great thing for us to experiment with when we find somebody who has the I or the U or the O and try one of these lines and like ask them about their pet or their family and see what happens. Our jaw will probably drop and they'll say, "Why is your jaw dropping?" And then we'll have to tell them about you and what we learned. Wow. Okay. You had also shared that you were going to tell us about the 6 communication styles. I'm intrigued by that. Is that communication styles that we can exhibit to, further our effectiveness in the world, or just we can identify them? Can you tell us about that?
Well, I think we have time to tell you about 2, but a lot of them are right there in those first vowels again. And for an example, the A is the one that is the mental person, and they like to think. So we're approaching an A, and you want to talk to them. You talk facts first, and only when business has been taken care of, then do you play and talk about other things. With the E, since they're coming from the heart and the emotions, you always ask, how are you first? How are you? How are your family? How are you feeling? How's this going? You always want to connect with an E first. So you're going to do your connection first, and then you're going to go into business. Because if you start with business first, the E person all day long will be sitting there going, wait a minute, they didn't even connect with me. What's wrong? What did I do wrong? And then they can't think all day long because this is bothering them that they didn't have a good connection to start with. So each one of us has a way of how we are greeted that's very important. The I always wants to be included. So suppose that you're going to go roller skating and you know that I friend of yours doesn't like roller skating. You still want to invite the I and give that I person the chance to say no thank you, because that way that person feels included. So whatever you're doing, you want to include the person that has an I, because if not, they take offense. With the O person, they always want to be able to give the advice or give the orders or make the final decision. So when you're talking to the O person, you always kind of say, what can I do for you, or how can I help, or that type of thing. You would never directly ask the O person or tell the O person to do something. You might ask, but you would never tell, because that person's going to be totally turned off if you tell them what to do instead of asking. They like to be useful, but they hate to be nagged. And so you're never going to nag. With the O person, they're the list makers. And so when you ask them to do something like take out the trash, but the trash is going to come and they still haven't taken it out. If you nag them, they'll put it on the bottom of their list, even though it was creeping up toward the top. However, if you come to them and you say, gosh, thanks for taking out the trash, even though you know they haven't done it yet, the minute you're out of the room, they'll go, oh my gosh, I need to do that. And then that goes to the top of their list and they'll get it done next. But as long as you're not nagging for the O person. The you person, when you talk to them, you start by telling a joke. Hey, I've heard a good joke lately. You want to hear it? Of course they do, because they're all about fun. And the why person is always gracious. When you thank the why person for making something comfortable for you or how much effort they went into to making the decorations nice, whatever it is, if you start with gratitude toward the why person and find something to say thank you for, you've opened up communications, and then they'll be more honest with you and give you more true communications. So that's how the basics of how you can do it. Again, it's to that first vowel.
Okay. Now, at the beginning, you had said, I don't remember exactly, but you said the middle name, I think, had something to do with what we're like when we're stressed. And the last name, I don't remember what you said. Could you repeat about the last name? And my question around that is what happens when we change our last name when we get married?
Okay. The middle name is how we morph or change under stress, and the last name is the effect of our environment on us. So if the first name is the essence of who we are, that's like saying that the first name is all the ingredients we have in our kitchen when we go in to cook. And the last name is all the recipes we can make out of those ingredients. And so that's the influence of the environment on us. The middle name is temporary under stress, who we will become and able to get a job done, because that's when we're stressed. Now, one of the most interesting things I found out later as I kept delving into these letters and patterns was that when the middle name of a person is stronger than the first name of a person, those people become procrastinators because they put themselves falsely under stress and able to get the best work out of themselves. Now, you asked about changing the last name. The last name represents your environment. So when you get married, your environment changes. You're now living with somebody else. You know, it's now different. And so the new last name will give you different environmental influences that will affect the first name. And there's many times in consultation with to-be brides, well, they'll come to me and say, is it in my best interest to change my last name to his name or not? And the majority of the time, I just say, here's what your name and your influence is now and the type of people you're bringing around you to give you these kind of pressure points or gifts. And with the new last name, this is what your environment will be like. And so they have information to make a good, solid decision for themselves. Every once in a while, I'll look at the names and I'll say, you know, if you take on his last name, you're going to lose your own identity and you will start trying to become what you think he wants from you until you don't know who you are anymore. And there's a problem with that because the person he fell in love with will no longer be there as you keep trying to morph and change. But you'll lose your own sense of self. And some women do that when they get married. So I'm watching out for that. I'm also watching out for if in the name, it'll let you know if there will be domestic violence or not, or if there will be rape or not. So I'm also looking for those things because if that appears, then I don't want that woman taking his name to encourage that energy to come in. Instead, she's got to stay strong with her own.
Wow. So have you ever said to, I mean, is there like such a thing as a bad name?
Well, every name has gifts and every name has challenges. And the majority of names have a very nice balance so that they have the gifts to overcome the challenges. Because I always say your challenges are written in your name, but so are your solutions written in your name. Now, there have been on rare occasions, because I have done thousands of people's names, and every once in a while, I'll get a name that I'm struggling to find something positive in it. I was doing a benefit for a school one time up in Washington State. We were doing a fundraiser, and the children were coming up in groups and giving me their cards with their names on it, and I was doing fast reads for everybody, and they were making a donation for that. And there was this one group of boys that came up, and I saved one name for last because I thought, oh, this is a tough name. And when I looked at it, I kept thinking, how am I going to say something positive? And finally, I looked at it when it was his turn and I said, you know, your challenge in this world is to think about how your actions affect other people. And because all I could see in his name was date rape all the way through, was how that sex was so important to him. He didn't care what body he had with him and what effect it did to them, but he was going to get his own pleasure. And so it was like, how do you talk to somebody like that? So I said, you know, your challenge is to see how your actions will affect somebody else prior to you causing or doing that action. And if you can learn that lesson in time, it'll keep you out of jail. And then it was like, next group.
Whoa.
But every once in a while, I'll see a name like that. And those to me are a little bit scary, because if you could see a name like that early enough, you could get counseling and learning, and then you could combat that or counteract that early through education. But it's very scary to me once they're, you know, high school or an adult.
Yes, no kidding. Wow. Okay.
On the other hand, you'd know not to date one. If you knew how to interpret a name, you'd say, oh, I don't want to date this person, unless that's also something you're after.
Okay. Well, I want a list of those names of people to avoid. But I don't want to ask you, because then anybody with that name, you know, all of the ladies will run in the other direction, or the men. Who knows? Maybe a woman could date rape somebody, so they would run in the other direction. So I won't ask you those names. But because I'm really getting what you're saying, how names, the science, it's a science. It's not just a theory. And I know that you developed it over 15 years. You tested it for 3 more years. Is there a way that we could use people's names to determine their learning style, if they're auditory learners or visual or kinesthetic? Is that in their name as well?
It absolutely is. Isn't that amazing? All of that is in their name. And so if you have the vowels, get us in those first vowels, which is what I think is so tremendous. The E and the U, if your first vowel, those are your kinesthetic learners. They have to do a hands-on. That's how they learn the best. It's not that they can't learn the other ways, but they need to get in there and do something with their hands, because that's what makes them happy and that's what makes them really remember it. Your A and your O are your visual learners. If they see it, they'll remember it and they can recall it, because they can like bring it back up to them in front like an old screen again. But if it's an I or it's a Y, they're auditory learners. That's their dominant way of learning. They're very good listeners, and once they've heard it, they can learn it. And again, it sits right there in that first vowel. That's what I'm saying, is every letter and every position holds so much information. You know, I'm just giving you a tiny little tidbit of each one.
This is so powerful. This is just absolutely blowing my mind, and I cannot believe how quickly this time is passing. I know all of us could listen to you forever and a day, but you know what I would love for you to do is to share with our listeners some of the ways that you've seen your clients use the knowledge that you've shared and apply it to their lives and have some amazing results. Can you share some experiences with us?
Well, I would love to. I have talked with many salespeople, from car salespeople to real estate people, and said just how you go to sell is, again, sitting in that first vowel of that first name, but all the rest is enhancing to it. And they have increased their sales, and they just feel like life is so much easier because they have such a higher percentage of sales using the technique of going through the names to know how to approach someone and what they need to hear or how to sell to that person. And in chapter 2 of the book, it really goes into an example of how you would sell to everybody, because I always think if what I'm sharing isn't practical and you can't apply it right away, why bother? So a lot of salespeople I've talked with, I've helped lawyers how to present a case to a particular judge, how to look at a client differently, how to make their case so that it can be understood. We've looked at jurors' names and who would be good on the jury for this particular case and who would not. I've helped people that are massage therapists know how to connect in very short time with a client where they'll want to come back and they feel relaxed, before you're asking them to take off all their clothes because you're going to go massage their bodies. I've worked with HR departments, and before they get this list of names and all these people have applied, and they go through and they're saying, we're looking for these qualities in this particular position. Here's the names of the people who have applied. Who should we be interviewing and whose resume should we be looking at? Because oftentimes they're overwhelmed with way too many to even start with. So they send me a list of names, and I'm the one that narrows it down for them. Then there's many families that come to me and say, you know, we're struggling. We're not communicating well one with another, or we're pushing each other's buttons. How can we get along better? My favorite story with that is there was a couple after I'd given a talk in Kauai, and there was a couple that came to me and asked if I had any openings left for consultations. And I said, just one. So if you can make that one, you're good. And during that, all I do is look at both names. They don't have to tell me what the problems are, the issues are, because it's sitting there in their names when you compare them. And I looked and I said, oh, they said, we're having communication problems. And I said, this is what you're doing that pushes his buttons, but you could say the same thing if you just tweaked it this way. And then when I looked at him, because I could tell from his name he was there under duress and not because he really wanted to be there. And I said, you know, it looks to me like every 2 years a lady would break up with you. Do you want to know why? And after making a joke as a kind of self-defense thing of saying, yeah, that's what's been happening, but all my friends say I'm the only thing in common with, you know, with all these ladies, so it has to be me. I'm causing it. I said, well, do you want to know what you're doing that's causing it? So he eventually said yes. And I looked at his name and I said, you always have to be right. You don't know how to apologize. You don't know how to admit you've made a mistake. And the lady will say, oh, well, he'll get over that. And pretty soon, you know, once he gets more comfortable with me, then it'll change and everything. And at the 2-year mark, they realize he's never going to change. He can never be wrong. He doesn't know how to admit to making a mistake. And he honestly doesn't think he makes any. And they go, I don't want to be with that. So that need to be right at all costs is what's costing him his relationships. And so the reason I remember that couple so well is usually at the end of a session, couples go home and they work it out and their relationships improve. And what I didn't know is they came to me at a time where they were saying, should we put in more effort or should we call it quits? It was a decision-making time. And they found me later at a show that we had gone to see, and they came down during intermission, and they said, we've been doing nothing but talking since you talked with us, and we have decided not to stay together because it will be too much work, and we realize that now. But the best thing is we're not having any resentments, grudges, wish I coulda, shoulda, woulda. We're separating in peace, and we're going to be able to move on, you know, without the hurt. And this is just fabulous. And then they both sent me a check later on separately and said, you don't charge enough. And they gave me more money. That's why I'll never forget them.
I wouldn't forget them either. Wow. Those all are fascinating. You know, who would think your name? This is blowing my mind. I just have to tell you. And just resonating so strongly. I'm sure it's resonating with everybody who's listening. And I get really excited about helping people take control of their lives. And I know that there's so much more that we could learn from you. And I know that you put together a special offer for everyone who's listening to this call. Simply click on the special offer button that's on this page. So Sharon, could you let everyone know what they'll find there?
Oh, I'd be glad to. First of all, you're going to get 92 days of emails. Every email is 1 to 2 paragraphs, and it's teaching you all the basics of Nameology. And it's coming in such nice little chunks of 1 to 2 paragraphs a day that you can remember that piece and go ahead and put it into practice immediately. So that's for everybody who's scared, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn so fast. And that will teach you all the basics and all the mnemonic devices and how to remember it in nice, short little quips. The second item you will get is a downloadable MP3 on my second book that is all about the spirit and how you read your contract with God in your lifetime. And you're getting a copy of a seminar that I gave on that particular book. The third thing you're getting is, again, this Nameology Science Basics. I did a teleseminar, and I taught a great deal of this and you're getting it. So you can put it in the car and listen to it and learn it that way also, besides your emails that are coming. And then an amazing thing, because this would cost you almost the same to see me as what you're paying for this entire package, is you get a half-hour private session with me.
Wow. I want that. Sign me up. What a great idea to offer these 92 days, because that's, I think, some of the problem is that people get overwhelmed when they get all of the information at once. But what you're doing is you're giving people small chunks just so that every day we just get a little bit more knowledge. We could put that into use, a little bit more, put that into use. That is sensational. And then we get a session with you. And all of this for $97.
It's an amazing deal, and not one that I offer very frequently. Wow. But I'm pleased to do it for Live Big Media because it's such a remarkable company and gives opportunities to people in so many different departments and areas.
Yes, and we really do. We love our people, and we really just love to serve them, and you are totally helping us do that. So again, everybody, please, it's www.livebigmedia.com/name, NAME, or you could simply click on the special offer button that's on this page, and you'll see Sharon's absolutely amazing, very, very generous offer, including a personal session with her, a half-hour personal session. Wow, for $97. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is so exciting. So I have another question. What do you believe are the biggest benefits that people can expect to experience starting right away and then over time by applying what they learn from your program and having this personal session with you, short term and long range?
Well, short term, you can talk to anyone. And what you'll find is that when you realize that every name has gifts and every name has challenges, you no longer start thinking that somebody's better than you or somebody's not as good as you. So that judgment factor really goes away. And it's so much easier to have peace with every single person that you're talking with. And a side benefit of that is that you learn to really appreciate each person for who they are and what they're dealing with. The long-term benefits is that you can immediately look at a name and compare it to your name and say, you know, time is such a fleeting factor, and we all have the same limited amount of it. And you can say, is this where I want to give my time? Is this person going to be a long-term or a short-term introduction person? Is this somebody I want to do business with? Is this going to be somebody I want to get to know better? So you can better manage your time and how different people usurp or take your time and where you want to give it and where you want to conserve your time. The other thing that's really the best benefit is you'll start to find that you get to know yourself better and why you're here, and you have less judgment with yourself, and you have less self-talk in your head about, oh my gosh, why are you doing that? It's just like people that have a D in their name and they need clutter somewhere. Instead of beating themselves up because they have clutter and they seem, even after they pick things up to create clutter again, you realize, oh, I have clutter in my name because that's the key to get my brain thinking creatively. Because as I start thinking, how am I going to clean that up? My creative juices flow and then I can put it anywhere. So you start seeing that things that you may have judged about yourself are not worthy of judgment. And so you learn to love yourself that much more also.
Oh, my goodness. You just helped me understand something so big. We love you. You are helping us so much. And I also realize that you can help us from wasting our time, going into the wrong relationships. I mean, I have friends who have been married 3, 4. I have a friend who's been married 5 times. You probably could have helped her, you know, with at least 4 out of the 5, or probably all 5, but must be in the name. And also business partners. Do we want to go into a business relationship with a person? All of these things, like you say, could just save us so much precious time if we know how to look into the name.
Well, it can also save us from being hurt unnecessarily.
Yes. Wow. Well, this is fantastic. Simply click on the special offer button that's on this page, and you will see Sharon's very, very powerful, very generous offer. I hope everybody takes advantage of it. Only $97, and it includes a private session. Well, this has been amazing. And before we say goodbye, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with everyone?
You know, we all want inner peace. We would all like peace with all of our neighbors. And it starts at home. How can a country have peace with another country if a state can't have peace with state and a city with a city, and if we can't have peace with our neighbors and who we interact with? And once you get to know the name of somebody and you can see what they're dealing with, it really brings out the compassion inside, and it helps you get along with everybody. And isn't that what we're all striving for anyway? And here's a fast key to help you accomplish just that.
Wow. Beautiful. Well, all I could say, thank you for everything you've given us so generously, for your generous offer, and just thank you for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Debra. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, well, this has been just absolutely beyond amazing and opened our minds up to a whole new field that I don't think any of us were aware existed. So thank you for developing this, and thank you for sharing it with us. And thank you to everyone for spending this time with me and with Sharon, Lynn, Wyeth, and I look forward to when we're all together again. This is Debra Poneman. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye for now.